Uh, G'day, guys. Welcome to the first episode of the Keats Pod. And I have my first special guest as well, a very special person. His name is Andrew Conte. How are you, Andy?
I'm very good, thanks, Rones. Thanks for having me, mate. I feel quite privileged to be on the season launch.
That's it. The first episode and the first guest as well, mate. So you've gone down in history.
Excellent.
You're more my brothers, mate. But anyway, you and I do have a bit of history. We get along well. So yeah, let's get this pod going, mate. So just the first question I got for you: Are you a podcast fan in general?
I am actually. I mean, being an office-based worker, I mean, I used to listen to podcasts, day in, day out, and never been on one. Listened to lots, but never been on one. So this is a new experience, mate.
Yeah, it's good, mate. That's really good. So just in terms of the podcast that you like, which ones do you actually listen to and you like?
Oh, look, there's a couple of different ones. I liked some of the more creative ones. So like the I find them a lot better when they're free flowing. So, for instance, sake, there was one I used to listen to called Beautiful Anonymous. I don't know if you've ever heard of it before, but it's Chris Gethard. He's a
I haven't heard
comedian.
of Beautiful Minds.
No, it's really good. So he's an
Okay.
American comedian, and he essentially just cold calls people, and he has to talk to them for an hour. He can't hang up. They can hang up, but he can't hang up. So he has to keep the conversation going for an hour. And it's like every episode
Wow.
is just really quite detailed because he'll call a random person and they just get talking about anything and everything. He just says to them, "How you going?"
Surely it's a setup.
Literally complete.
Surely it's
No,
a
it's
setup where
not.
they spoke before.
No, it's not.
It's
He
not
he
because a
cold
lot of people
calls them
just
out of
hang
the
up.
blue. Yeah, and a lot of people do. So I think
Does he?
the first episode he had to call like five different people before someone actually was like, "Hey, I'm actually on my lunch break at work," and then he talked to them for an hour. It was really good.
Wow, that's very interesting. Because I don't know about your phone, but my phone, when I get a random number, it says it's a scam call. I've got an Oppo, and it's really smart. And I just hang up on the scam calls. Do you get that with your phone? You
Oh,
get a random number
I
trying to call
get
you?
heaps of scam calls, mate. I get heaps. Yeah, if I don't know the number, I just hang up. So I'd be terrible for that
Yeah.
podcast. I'd see the random number,
Did
just
you?
hang up straight away.
You know when there's a scammer trying to call you to do something? Do you know there's that weird sound that happens before they talk to you?
No, I didn't know that. I know that
Okay.
I know there's a delay. Like you answer it and you'll say, hello, it's such and such, and then you hear nothing, and then there's that
Yeah.
delay, and then they finally talk, and you go, oh yeah, here we go.
Yeah. Well, with me, they like if I accidentally answer to a scammer, I hear this noise like a doop, and then they start talking, and then I know straight away, and I just hang up. So you don't get that
Ah,
problem. Oh,
no,
I
no,
don't
I don't
know.
get that. You must have a special phone, mate.
Okay. I've got a pretty cheap JB Hi-Fi Oppo phone, mate. It's not that special.
Still as good,
Anyway,
still as
mate,
good as
just
the Samsungs.
just in terms of where you grew up, Andy, where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Geelong. I'm born and bred Geelong. Um, Mum and dad are also born and bred Geelong, but I'm from a massive family. So obviously you know this, Rones, but to the listeners, they don't know this stuff.
Yeah,
So
I know.
I'm one of five kids. So yeah, we all grew up in Geelong and we all still live in Geelong. So like a good WOG family, we all decided that we'd had enough of mum and dad once we all hit 18, and we thought we'll move a long way away, so we're all within 5 minutes of each other.
You did have a stint when you lived in Melbourne for a few years, I remember, because you used to come over and visit us a few times when I was living
Yeah,
with
yeah,
Timmy
yeah.
in Kensington.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
So
it
you were in Melbourne, was it 2 or 3 years?
Oh, not even. I don't even think I lasted 2 years up there. I was working in a Melbourne office up there for about
Mm-hmm.
6 years or so, and then when I met my now wife, we lived in Craigieburn for
Mm-hmm.
about 18 months, I think it was. Yeah, but it worked out that the commute from Craigieburn was the exact same distance as traveling all the way from Geelong, so it just made sense to come back.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's wild. It's
All
wild.
right. That is well. So you just said you've got multiple. So was it multiple brothers you have, or you have brothers and sisters?
I've got one sister, and I've got three
Mm-hmm.
brothers. So I'm one of four boys, and then I got my older sister. But she's more like
Oh,
a
okay.
second. She's more like a second mother than an older sister.
So what does your sister do for a living?
My sister works for NDIS, so for years she did copywriting. She tried her hand in journalism. wasn't a huge fan of that. Then started doing copy editing. She's actually exceptionally clever at it. She is our grammar
Hmm.
Nazi in the family, and if we ever do a quiz, she's the one we go to because she's just a wealth of knowledge. But now she works for NDIS, but not as a copy editor. It's a slightly different position now. It's helping them with all their marketing and their website. She's actually relatively high up there.
That's really good, man. So, in terms of your brothers, what do they do for a living?
Well, I'm the black sheep in the family because most of well, one of my brothers is an engineer. My father is also an engineer, and I'm an architect. So it makes
Yeah,
Sunday family dinners often quite an argument between whether design is more important or practicality is more important. And then my youngest brother is a graphic designer, so he stayed design side with me, which was why I still love him. And then my other brother is a teacher, so quite varied in terms of our career paths.
yeah. All professional career paths though, which is
Yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's really, really good.
all
Because just
professional.
speaking
Yeah.
of your brothers, I remember definitely one of them, maybe another one. They were in a band with my brother Timmy, and
Yeah,
they used to play some music together. Was it two of
yeah.
your brothers?
No, just one, just one. So Mick is the Michael is the brother below me. He's an exceptionally good vocalist and guitarist, and he's actually he's been in
Hmm.
multiple bands, but the main band he's in now is Chasing Mojo. So they do kind of gigs all over the place. They do stuff in Geelong, they do stuff in the country. But yeah, Timmy for a while was in the band with him as the drummer, and I think they did
Yeah,
maybe like 6 or 7 gigs, around Geelong, and they did an open day at Deakin and stuff. It was great to go and watch.
yeah. I never watched. I should have gone though. Anyway, yeah. So, did they ever make an album?
Look, Mick,
Your brother's band?
yeah, look, Mick's a funny cat, mate. He has got to be probably one of the best local musicians I've ever listened to. But the bloke's not interested in
Mm.
fame whatsoever. He just loves his music. He just loves his music to death. We've said to him for years and years and years, make an album, get stuff recorded. He's an exceptional songwriter as well. So he wrote he's written heaps of different songs. He actually helped me write a song that me and him performed for my wife at our wedding. And then he's done
Mm.
heaps and heaps and heaps of other stuff with the family. So no, they've never actually officially recorded an album, but he should.
Yeah, he should. Hopefully, it's something he at least tries once and he doesn't regret it the older he gets. But yeah, so just a bit about your family. So you have actually before we speak about your family, one thing I did notice growing up that growing up in younger days, you were quite the ladies' man. You always had a girlfriend, pretty much throughout your
What?
teenage years. There wasn't much of a gap when you were single.
No, there wasn't, mate. Now look, it. I'm not sure what to say on that topic, right? Now look, it's
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah,
look, I am a very social person, and I had lots and lots of different social groups as I was growing up. So, yes, I did jump around for a bit of a time there, but since since
you
then,
did.
since then I've hung up the boots,
Yeah,
mate, and I'm a one woman
yeah,
man now.
yeah, yeah. So it seems like you're very much a relationships person.
Oh, very
You
much
just
so.
you
Yeah,
just liked having a partner. No,
yeah,
that's good, man.
yeah,
That's really
yeah.
good. Yeah. So just a bit. So you have you're married now and you have two daughters.
Yep, married and two daughters. So yeah,
Yep. So
that single
how?
life to now is very different, right?
Yeah, it is. So what are your daughters' names?
So I got two girls. I got 4-year-old, nearly 5-year-old, but she's Willow, and then I've got a 2-year-old Matilda.
Yeah, no worries. And your partner, I have met your partner, but I forgot her name. What's her name?
Christy is her name.
Christy. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
Christy. Nice.
yeah.
So just a few questions about your kids. So they were born in Geelong?
Yeah, both born in Geelong, both born public system Geelong Hospital. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Did you cut the umbilical cords for both your kids?
I didn't cut. I cut the umbilical cord for Willow. I didn't cut the umbilical cord for Matilda. Matilda was a slightly more complicated birth. So
Yeah.
after she was actually delivered, it was we were more
Mm.
focused on Christy than we were on cutting the cord. With Willow, it was the I mean, I could talk for an hour on the birthing experiences with those two Roans, but Willow was
Yeah.
born during COVID. So, you know, being from a WOG family, we're used to having a million people around when any
Hmm.
kind of big life event happens. And COVID, we were, as you would have experienced as well, we were locked down for months and months and months. And I think it was a week before we were about to deliver, they said not even the support person was going to be allowed in the room. So it means not even I was going to
Hmm.
be allowed at the birth technically. And I just said to them, you can try. I'll kick the door down if you'd stop me from going in there. But so it ended up being just me and
Surely, yeah.
yeah, it ended up being just me and Christy. And then after Willow was born, I was pretty much kicked out about an hour after that. And I reckon I sat in the car for 5 hours or so in the next morning waiting for him to open the doors. But
Damn.
so with Willow, it was very
Geez,
different.
COVID was tough.
Yeah, COVID
Yeah,
was
geez, COVID was tough.
it was an interesting experience for us because, as you alluded to before, I was working in Melbourne at the time. And because of
Mm.
COVID, I was locked down. So I was actually working from home. And it ended up being, I think, what was it in Geelong? Like 10 months we were locked down for or something like that. So
Mm.
Willow was born and we went into lockdown. So I pretty much had 9 months at home with her. So look, lots of people had really, really bad experiences with COVID. For
Mm.
me, I got to be home with my newborn child and, still working, still earning money. So for me, it ended up being a great experience. I mean, minus, not being able to go anywhere.
Mm. Did your partner or wife now, did she get a bed pretty easy at hospital? Because I know that during COVID they were getting packed out with people that had coronavirus. So, to your knowledge, did she get a bed pretty easy and it was a pretty fluent process getting her to the hospital prior to her giving birth?
Yeah, look, it's been again, it's been a very different experience for different people. For
Mm.
us, we pretty much went in there. I think we were like the 19th baby that was delivered on that day or something
Oh, wow.
ridiculous. So,
Unbelievable.
yeah, unbelievable,
Yeah.
right? And we think it's special because it's ours, and then the nurses are sitting there being like, "Oh yeah, we've delivered 19 before this," and you don't feel so special anymore. But no, we pretty much walked straight in and then straight into a room. We didn't really have any problems at all, and then she went straight from there up to the ward. So it was, yeah, Geelong Hospital was
Mhm.
exceptional for that. We talked about the benefits of private versus public, but yeah, can't fault the public system. It was great for us.
Okay, that's really good, Andy. Yeah. So just a few other things now. I don't think you know that I know this, but Tim told me a few things. Your youngest daughter, she cried a fair bit during her younger stages.
Oh,
Yeah,
they still crying, mate. That's
yeah,
that's
yeah.
why I'm
Like,
hiding down in my dungeon downstairs.
yeah. Is it so to the point? Your youngest daughter, she had colic.
Nah, nah. Look, she didn't have colic. I think nah, I wouldn't have said she had colic. I mean,
When okay.
the experience with her, I guess, was just slightly different from a for with Willow, she was coming into a family. She had 100% of our attention, being the firstborn child. Secondborn
Hmm.
child comes into the family and has to share that attention, obviously, because you've still got the other child. So I think the difference probably
Hmm.
was we were more experienced as well. So we allowed her to cry a little bit more to help break that dependency. So it was harder in some ways, but we were more experienced. So it was an okay the net gain of the experience. It ended up being more beneficial. She's a much calmer child, much earlier in her life than what our firstborn was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So would you say that they both ended up good sleepers, both your daughters?
Yeah, both exceptional sleepers. Like we had a period of time there. I'm not sure if Timmy ever told you the story about how Matilda broke her tooth. Did
No,
Tim
Timmy
did
didn't
Tim
tell me
so
that. No.
look, I don't know how much time we have, mate. I don't know how much
No,
detail
you got plenty of time.
I don't know how
Just
much
talk, mate.
detail you
I'm
I don't know
paying.
how much
I'm paying for Zoom, so we can go for as long as we want.
all right. Well, as you would know, mate, being in a relationship as well, very,
Yeah.
very often we are wrong as the husbands, but we hate to admit it, right?
Yeah.
So we had this little
Yeah.
baby bath that we used to put in our shower, and the girls would sit in that while we shower so that they could have a bath. And I used to say
Hmm.
to my wife all the time, don't let them stand up in there because if they fall, they'll smack their face, no good. Anyway,
Mm.
my wife was out, I was on duty, and the girls were playing, and I thought, I always give a shit about this bath. I'll let it go. They were playing. 2 seconds later, Matilda gets up on the edge, falls out, smacks her face on the tiles. I lift her up and I looked at her and I went, "Oh shit!" And the
She chipped her
whole,
teeth.
yeah, well, not chipped her tooth. She snapped one of her front teeth in half, like
Oh,
gone.
lucky it's baby teeth. Lucky it's
Lucky
only
it's
baby teeth.
lucky it's baby teeth, right?
Oh
But this
no.
is this is where the story gets wild, right? So
Okay.
my wife gets home. I'm just sitting there with her, and I'm like, "I'm sorry, but this is what's happened." Showed her the face. Anyway, took her to the dentist. The dentist kind of said, "Look, you know, being her age, we don't want to take the tooth out. We'll just seal it up, leave it for the time being."
Mm,
They suspected it could potentially, get bad. Blah blah blah. Anyway, cycle
hmm
forward 6 months. She's been cruising around with a broken tooth. Um, and we were having a lot of trouble with her sleeping. And this is what I was talking about with Tim. This is where all the crying came from. So there was a lot of crying. She was having trouble sleeping. We couldn't work it out. Then one night, she kind of woke up 3, 4, 5, 6 times throughout the night. I go in there about 11 o'clock at night, and her whole face is swollen up. Her lips were like elephant. They were huge. And I've taken one look at her. I've gone, holy shit, we need to get her to the hospital. So we rush into Geelong Hospital, and they take one look at her and they're like, well, she's had an allergic reaction to something. And we're racking our brain. We can't think of what it is. She's been asleep. We haven't fed her anything. Anyway, they give her a
mm,
bit of antihistamine, send her home. She wakes up the next day. Like, we only went home for a couple of hours. If anyone has experienced going into emergency room, you sit there for 9 hours, you get seen for half an hour, you go home for another 5 hours. Next morning, get up and she's
mm.
got bruising around her eyes and her cheeks were swollen. And we're going, this is not,
Wow.
this is not good.
Unbelievable.
So we take her back into
Mm,
Geelong Hospital. They took one look at her and they just said straight to Royal Children's. So we rushed up there, and what it turned out to be is the tooth had turned. The tooth had turned, the root had died, and she actually had an abscess growing above her tooth. Now,
oh,
for an adult, that's fine, but for a baby, the abscess can actually affect their sight and a whole heap of things. So they said, tooth's got to come out. And because of her age, it was put her under, go through surgery, and that whole experience. So
mm,
we rush up to the Royal Children's Hospital. She goes under, she gets the tooth out, and it was about a 2.5 day experience because you got to wait to go in to get the anesthetic and bits and pieces. And then as it
mm,
turned, this is the most horror week of our life. So as it turns out, I'm sitting in there with her in the hospital. We're just about to be discharged, and my wife calls me because she's supposed to be picking us up, and she's in
mm.
an absolute panic. And she goes, "Oh my God, I'm rushing into the hospital with Willow. She's been bitten by a dog." And I was like,
Oh,
I'm
wow.
just trying to compute this story because I'm sitting in a hospital bed with the youngest child. She comes rushing into the
Mm,
hospital with my other child, and
mm,
she comes into emergency in the bottom. I said to her, because my wife is not great dealing with blood and bits and pieces. So I said to her, look, let's change over. So she came
mm-hmm.
up to the ward and I went down to emergency. I go down there, Willow's down there, I'm trying to settle her down. I think she had she ended up having 4 puncture wounds in her leg from a dash hound of all dogs. And the
Wow.
nurses look at me, and one of these guys in emergency looks at me and he goes, I know you. And I said, yeah, I was here 2 days ago with my other child rushing in through emergency to have her tooth out. And he's just like, what are you doing
Yeah,
here, man? Anyway, they take a look at Willow's
just
leg and
bad luck.
bad luck. And they take a look at Willow's leg and they go, I'm so sorry. She's going to need surgery. And I was just like, you're joking me. So I'm sitting there waiting in emergency with Willow. Christy's gone up to get Matilda and discharged her. The nurses have come in and have said, a bed has freed up. And I said, it wasn't on the possum ward, was it? And they said, yeah, it was. I said, it wasn't room 203, was it? They said, yeah, it was. I ended up taking Willow back up to the same room that I was sitting in with Matilda for the last 2 days because that's the room that just freed up. The nursing staff took one look at me and
Wow.
they're like, why are you back? What are you doing here again? And I was like,
Your other kids in the
I'm here with,
wars.
yeah, I'm here with my other kid. So it ended up being about a 5 day experience, both kids under anesthetic in surgery at the Royal Children's Hospital. It was wild, mate. It was wild.
Yes. So this dachshund, was it like a neighbour's dog or?
Nah, so my mother-in-law lives in Fawkner, which is not far from where the hospital is. She had the
Yeah.
dachshund there. So it was a family dog, but it was an older dog. And yeah, completely
Oh,
unprovoked,
okay.
just
Not
jumped
nice
off
with
the
kids.
Nah, just jumped off the couch and got her. And then we've since had to
Yeah.
explain when dogs go to the farm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Yes, mate.
yeah.
Just further on from that, mate, just a bit about the high school you went to. Which high school did you go to?
I went to Belmont High. So, for those that know Geelong, if the majority of your listeners are from Geelong, they'll know Belmont High. So at top of Roslyn Road.
Yeah. Would you say it was a good school to go to? Public school?
Look, my opinion of schools is, I guess, slightly different to how most people. I don't think the school itself makes a huge difference in the learning of the child. Like, I personally loved Belmont. I had a great experience there. I had excellent teachers. I had a good network of friends. That the school at the time I was there was really well set up, good offering of classes, all that kind of jazz. But I was a very driven child anyway. I kind of knew what I wanted to do from a young age. So I very much enjoyed school. I enjoyed the intellectual side of it. I enjoyed, being in a classroom. It served me well. So yeah, I would say it was an excellent school.
That's good because I have heard that out of multiple public schools in Geelong, like Belmont High had a good reputation. So
Yeah,
that's
look,
good.
I
Would
mean,
would you actually would you send your kids there?
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, I believe
Yeah.
more in the fact that I think the learning with a child starts at home. So, a lot of what I learnt growing up was from my father because, he was the harshest teacher we ever had. He used to sit us down every night and say, "What are you learning this week?" And then he'd go through it with us. So
Mm,
whether it was, mum would take us through English and dad would take us through physics and maths and chem and all that stuff.
mm.
So yeah, I would send my kids there. I still think it's a pretty good public school. Again, you're making me feel old, Rones, because it's been a fair few years since I've been at high school, mate.
Yeah. Nah, it's good, mate. What we'll do now, we'll just talk a bit about your career, mate. So you are an architect and you are registered, which is good. Um,
Finally, yep.
just if you could briefly explain to the pod listeners, if someone asked you what does an architect do, how would you answer that?
Mm, that's a good question, mate. That is a very good question. Because I guess the role of an architect for your pod listeners is quite varied because depending on what we are approached for, our service can change. But essentially the the main thing that an architect will do is help a client, like if we're talking purely residential, the main thing that an architect will
Mm,
do is with our experience with not just design, I guess, but the industry and the process of building and everything that is involved with getting you from your idea of what you want to walking into your home. That's really the job of an architect. Um, Traditionally, I guess with residential work, an architect is much more heavily involved with the client, which is a mum and dad or a developer or someone looking for an investment property. And essentially, what we can do is a client will come to us, they will have an idea of what they want, and then we can help build that into a reality. So we essentially take their understanding of what it is they want, what is the key ideas, what are the key rooms, what are the key features, what's the aesthetic, what's the feel, plus budget, plus time, plus constraints, push all that together and then propose an option for what we can then deliver for them. And then we can either manage that process the whole way through, we can get builder involved and they can manage that process. It's quite varied, but um, again, I'm talking purely domestically. A majority of my work now is commercial. So in that realm, it's a completely different ball game. Mainly because in the
mm,
commercial world, we start to bring in other consultants which pick up services that an architect would traditionally do domestically that we don't typically do commercially. So we'll have project managers involved, we'll have builders involved much earlier. We have different procurement methods that we use commercially than we would use domestically. There's a vast array of consultants. There's much more involvement from building surveyors. There's much more involvement from councils and different
mm.
authorities. So it's a yeah, chalk and cheese, completely different ball game.
Yeah, yes. Because being a building surveyor myself, um, I have noticed differences between how heavily architects can be involved. with commercial and domestic. With domestic especially, I've realised that some of these architects, they're very heavily involved in the building permit process.
Yep.
So the client will actually pay them to actually help them get the permit. So, get the architectural plans right. If there's engineering to be fixed, go back and forth, get that fixed. All the administrative documents, if there's report and consents, the Form 1, all the details going on the building permit. So yeah, I personally know that, architects are very, very heavily involved in the building permit process. There's also, well, they're called building designers now, but they used to be called draftspersons. So yeah, they do have an integral role in the industry. So
Look,
you do enjoy being an architect?
oh, I love it. I mean, look, again,
Mm,
um, for me, I knew from like year 7 that I wanted to do architecture. It was kind of a no-brainer for me. I loved drawing, I loved construction, and I loved math. So it was kind of like, all roads lead to architect. Um,
okay.
the Yeah, and then I mean, look, once I got into, I had an interesting experience, I guess, getting to where I am, because my experience of university versus the real world was a very polarizing experience. I obviously started with good old T-bomb at TAFE
Mm,
first. So we did an
you did.
advanced diploma of drafting, in brackets architecture, at the Gordon
Mm,
TAFE. And that was a superb experience because that really taught us fundamentals of how something is actually built. My recommendation to anybody going into architecture now is that you should either do a year, 6 months, a year working with a builder, or do a TAFE course first. And the reason that I say that is because when I hit university, university again is an exceptional field of an array of different things that you can learn about design and about creativity and about ways of approaching architecture. It was more about the ethos of what architecture is, whereas what I learned at TAFE was the fundamentals of how the construction industry works. And that's probably the biggest gap that I found with university, is that if you don't really push the learning, because university is self-driven, if you don't push the learning and try and squeeze that out of some of the units that you're doing, you miss that fundamental knowledge. Whereas at TAFE, they took us to the point where they said, draw a set of plans by hand, no computers. We had a set of pens and we literally had to draw the floor beams and we had to draw the walls and we had to draw the trusses. So you literally had to understand every single element that went into a wall, every single element that went into the floor. And again, while that's domestic, that knowledge, I guess, is transferred through as you go through. So once I hit university, both me and Tim had the same experience. Once we hit university, I think our baseline knowledge of how to build something really helped springboard then applying a design ethos to that, if that makes sense.
mhm. So with Gordon TAFE, if you actually did that, is it true that was the government paying for the first year or two of the TAFE course? Is
I
that true?
wish.
Yes, I
I
didn't have
wish.
it because
I
they were
wish
offering
that.
that when I was younger for the building course. I did a building and I did a diploma of building surveying at the Gordon TAFE when I was younger, and the government actually paid for it.
Oh,
And
that's
also
that's good.
going to TAFE, it actually slashes off is it 18 months or even 2 years of the degree?
It's not. It wasn't that clean cut for us
Yeah.
because both me and Tim went into the double degree, so we did architecture and construction management at the same time. Because we went into the double degree, when we did the TAFE course, it took a certain number of units off us. So some units we were first year, some units we were third year. So it didn't cleanly take 2 years. It's not like we came into third year architecture. We kind of came into second year architecture, first year construction management, kind of,
Mhm.
but chop and change units out of that. So it ended up being the same amount of time. I think it was
Mhm.
8 years in total, including the TAFE course, and that includes masters as well.
Mhm.
Um, but then there were certain semesters where we only had to do like 1 or 2 units because we didn't have to do we came estimating, for instance sake, which was one of the courses we did. We came into estimating into third year, so we didn't have to do the first and second year of estimating. That's just one example.
All right, cool, mate. Now, just I'll just want to move on to the VBA. So,
Hmm.
I know that when architects get registered, they get registered with the ARBV.
Yes.
Now, do architects have much to do with the VBA in terms of, do you know of any architects that, they get email, like if you're registered with ARBV, are you getting emails from the VBA for updates in the building industry? Do you know of any architects that are getting in trouble with the VBA? So, yeah, I know that, as I said before, architects have their own registration process.
Yep.
Do architects have anything to do with the VBA these days?
We do in industry. We
Yeah.
don't through our registration process. So our
Okay.
registration process is purely through the ARBV,
Mm.
which, yeah, it's essentially an accreditation outside of university, which is the one thing that they don't that you don't learn until you get into the course is that you do 6 years. Oh well, if you're doing pure architecture, you do 4 years,
Mm.
and at the end of that, you then have to go and do, like you would for a driver's license, you do 3,000 hours experience approximately across the different competency units. You then sit exams. Beyond that, you have to fill, oh, sorry, before that, you have to do a logbook with all the hours. You sit an exam, and then you sit in front of a board at the
Mm.
ARBV, and that's how you become registered. In regards to the VBA, our involvement with the VBA only really comes into play in industry, in the projects that we work on. So if the VBA gets involved from a dispute, or there's something to do with VCAT, for instance sake, they potentially get involved in that. If we're working with a consultant who's negligible, sometimes we'll be brought in those cases with the VBA. But in terms of our registration and I guess the day to day with architects, no, there's not really too much involved with the VBA unless you want it to be. Like I register to their updates, so I get their updates just purely for my own knowledge about what's happening and changes. They send a number of updates when there's NCC changes, if there's
Mm.
changes to any of the Australian standards, if there's they have kind of hot topics as well that they focus on. So there's a number of things that you can kind of, I guess, build CPD on if you like through the VBA. But
Mm.
but in answer to your question as a summary, no, not really. There's not much involvement with the VBA and architects.
All right, that's good. Now, Andy, we'll move on from that, mate. Just I know that you built your own house.
I did.
Did you do it as an owner builder?
I did. Yeah. Yep.
Nice. So just about the course, because look, a bit of news for you, you probably haven't heard. A few weeks ago, I actually bought my first house
Oh,
in Altona
congrats, mate.
Meadows.
That's great.
Yeah, so it was 540K. It's a two better,
Yep.
but with a renovation, we can make it a three better. I do have future plans to renovate it, and I'm considering doing it as owner builder as well. Just
Yep.
the process of the owner builder, for the pod listeners out there. So there is actually a bit of a course through VBA.
There is. Look, the process is vastly different now. I mean, I built
Yeah.
my house in 2016,
Mm-hmm.
and the process was very, very different then. It's nowhere near as regimented as it is now. Um, After I completed my house, there was a number of kind of publications that came out from the VBA about owner builders and the quality of the work of owner builders and the danger, I
Mm-hmm.
guess, of building your own house is no small feat.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and even with my experience as an architect and even with the assistance, daily of my father who built our family home, we still had challenges and, trying to work things out. And look, we did things over the top for this place. We over engineered and
Mm-hmm.
overcompensated for things purely because it's your own house. You
Mm-hmm.
want to build it right. But there are a number of cases recently across the past, 5 to 10 years of, I guess, inexperienced owner builders that hadn't gone through the now regimented course that resulted in, a number of dwellings being left unfinished, uninhabited because they just budget blowouts. I mean, anybody who's watched Grand Designs has seen the warnings about being an owner builder and what can happen with budget constraints. I mean, I used to spend every single night in Excel, which is my absolute favorite program of all time.
Mm-hmm.
But I used to spend hours in Excel across multiple sheets, managing budgets and time and cost and quality and all that type of stuff. But that's because that's what I do for a living now as an architect. But
Mm-hmm.
your traditional owner builder, unless you've had some experience with that stuff, it's quite daunting. There's a lot involved with scheduling of materials and managing the budget and trying to manage things that happen while you're constructing. So I had a quite a good experience. Um, I probably bit off a little bit more than I could chew with the place that I built, just based on the location and the scale. And
Mm-hmm.
I had slightly different, I had slightly different needs for what it is that I wanted to build. Obviously, being an architect and the fact that I got to design the house and got all the permits and all that stuff, it's obviously, it's obviously for me, it's a representation of my capabilities and my
Mm,
experience as an architect. So I didn't want it to be a square box. I wanted it to have some character and some articulation. But oh my God, Rones, did I pay for that, mate? I paid for, nice materials and fancy
mm.
articulated facades and things like that. But great experience, though. Great experience.
Yeah, it's good. Look, I do have plans of getting Timmy involved to help me out. So in terms of owner bill, I'm just curious with the insurance, if you're happy to share the amount you had to pay in insurance being an owner builder.
Look, I can't remember the exact amount. It was the insurance wasn't really much of an issue. I mean, the bigger issue that we had was the funding. So
Okay.
with with owner builder, you're only allowed to. I'm not sure if this is still the case, but for us, the bank would only lend you 60% of the construction cost. Um, Banks for most builders, they'll lend up to about 80%. So finding that 40% deficit between
Mm,
what the bank will loan you, you've essentially got to have a slush fund of money saved up after
mm,
you've purchased the land, after you've purchased all the materials in order to, complete a stage and get your progress payment back from the bank. So when
mm.
when you go own a builder, that's something again that you only really find out once you start to get involved in that process is that, you know, let's say it's a $400,000 build, you're only getting 60% of that through progress payments. So you've got to find the other 40%. In most cases, that's a substantial amount of money. I mean,
Mm.
400,000 now, when I say that, is ridiculous. No house is being built for 400,000 now, but 6 years ago, 7 years ago, that was probably a reasonable amount. But most houses now, if you're doing it as an owner builder and it's not a house and land package with a volume builder, you're pushing up 600, 700,000 for a relatively basic 3-bed home.
Yeah. Yeah. So just my future intentions with the house that I've got, I am pretty keen to be owner builder to renovate it. I'll have to show you the floor plan, but we can, it's a 2 bedroom unit, we can turn it to three.
Yeah.
There's a back al fresco that we plan on demolishing and extending out the lounge room. So it's nowhere near as much as what was involved with you, but I did plan on getting Timmy involved in the architecture design and helping with the budgeting and
Careful getting Timmy involved, mate. You'll end up with 4 stories and a pool in the backyard. And he's got
the
big ideas, that boy.
unfortunately my unit is one of four on an allotment, so there's town planning involved. So
Yeah.
see how I go with that. If I'm going to demolish an al fresco to extend out a lounge room, hopefully, the siding, like the garden area and all the other siding complies.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's
Sounds
something
sounds
for
like
me
you
to
sounds like
worry
you need
about
to
in the
get a good
future.
architect involved, mate.
Well, Timmy's registered, so he must be
Yeah.
good.
There you go.
Um, anyway, we'll talk about. I know in your younger days, probably not so much now. You're a busy man, but you were a bit of a sportsman.
I was, mate. I
So
was.
you,
Yeah, I
you
was.
did,
I dabbled in a fair few different sports, actually.
yes. So what were the sports you mainly dabbled in?
Look, again, being one of four boys, yeah, we were always involved in sports, all of us. Um, my main sports were footy and cricket, obviously. So I played footy for all my junior years at South Barwon
Yeah,
in Geelong, and then that kind of, as I got into later years of schooling, that kind of slowed. I played badminton for a while, so I played that at a relatively high level as well. And then I even umpired footy for a while, but I couldn't live with myself umpiring footy, so I ended up coming back to playing footy. And then I also played cricket. So I played cricket all throughout my junior years, and then I also played some years into the senior years as well. So once I moved to Melbourne, I was playing footy in the Melbourne leagues up there for a while, and then as I'm sure you're aware, mate, you have kids, and all your free time is gone. It just
yeah,
vanishes. So
true. Yeah.
Now I play fairy princesses and tea parties rather than playing footy and cricket. Mm.
Who did you play cricket for?
Played cricket for Barrable. So I played cricket for Barrable all throughout my juniors. I actually did,
Melbourne.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I actually played Milo Havergo cricket there when I was in like, maybe like grade 3 or 4. They used to run
Mm.
this. They used to run this Milo Havergo cricket, and it was fantastic. You used to go there. We still had our own kits and stuff, but you'd get a little Milo kit. You had a Milo hat, and you had a
Mm.
Milo ball. I mean, I don't think they run that program anymore, but it
No,
was
I think they
like
do have Milo still.
they still got it. Oh,
Yeah,
great,
they
yeah.
still, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I loved that, and that's really what got me into cricket. And then, yeah, I played for years after that, pretty
I
much up
remember you played
until,
with your dad. You played a few years with your dad in seniors.
yeah, that was good fun.
I
So,
remember you telling me how many years did you play with your dad?
oh, probably like 4 or 5 years I played with him. I mean, we weren't look. Let's be honest here. We weren't playing top grade cricket. We were playing
That's mate.
we
It's
were
all
playing
fun.
Sunday D grade, but
That's the fun cricket, mate.
it was because it was hard it was hard for dad. It was hard for me, because I was recently married when we were playing cricket again, and it's hard to commit to the 2 weeks. Whereas with
Mm,
D grade, it's
it's
only
a
a
one
one
day.
dayer.
Yeah,
The only problem with D grade is every now and then you'd get that A grade player that couldn't play the 2 weeks that would drop down to D grade, and before you know it, your stumps are taken out behind you, and
they were a quick bowler.
you're like, I don't think he's a D grade player.
You're not a D grade cricketer.
Nah,
Yeah, I
definitely
remember because
not.
I played a fair bit of lower grade cricket in Geelong, like fifths and sixes, and
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
the better teams had the odd bowler that was too good,
yeah,
but
yeah.
you just had to
Yep.
try your best.
Yeah, look
Now I
now,
remember
now
with
I'm actually getting into golf
yeah,
now of all things, which is kind of
oh
like cricket, but
wow,
kind of not, but it's a bit more.
yeah.
Yeah, I get involved, invited to a lot of golf events with work, so it's hard to kind of, the ball is stationary. I don't have a ball coming at me, and it's a very different swing action. So I wouldn't say I'm much chop as a golfer, but I'm just getting there.
Have you got KO Sports?
Do I have KO Sports? No, no.
Yeah, do you
And
have,
we,
yeah, do
we
you have KO?
no, we got Disney Plus, mate. That's all that runs in this
Okay.
household.
I just thought I'd let you know because there's this new thing that's come out in America, and what they've done is they've got like an indoor stadium, and it's indoor golf. So they've got a massive projector screen. I watched an episode the other day. They had all the big dogs like Tiger Woods, Rory McIlroy, and they were split into teams of I think 4 players.
Oh
And what
yeah,
happens is you got the middle and you got a massive projector screen. You smash the ball in the projector screen, and the ball will land somewhere. And then just say, for example, it's the second hole, and you're probably within 20 meters of the hole. Then you got a hole two, and whatever's on the projector screen, like the location of all the bunkers and all that, it's the same as in the indoor center. And they place the balls there for the players, and then they play 20 meters from the. It's amazing.
that's
Um,
unreal.
I've got
That's
to. If I
unreal.
find a YouTube clip after this, I'll send it to you. But it was, and they loved it. Tiger Woods, they're all high fiving each other. They're having heaps of fun, and
Wow.
I think Ricky Fowler was there as well. So all the big dogs are there. But yeah, very interesting, mate. Now, your dad also he helped you. Has he got a construction background?
Look, Dad built our family home. So
Yeah, because he
I
helped you with the house
30.
frame. I think. Did he help you with the house frame?
He helped me every single day of the entire build, mate.
Yeah, because I remember Timmy went and I think he helped you a bit as well with the frame. And he said, "Geez, Andy, his dad goes there and he knows what he's doing."
Yeah, yeah.
Sounds
Look,
like
I
your
mean,
dad's a bit of a legend.
legend or pain in my ass, mate. Look, it's funny. Like my old man, growing up, there was nothing he couldn't do. So the
Mm,
old man's a jack of all trades, and he built our family home. He's an electrical engineer. He worked at Alcoa in Geelong for 36 years or so, and there's nothing that he can't do. Plumbing, electrics, timber frame, brickwork, concrete, you name it, he can do it. So he was an invaluable resource to me. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have had the house built. Or I'd still be building it now, mate, 6 years later. So no, look, he was really he was really good from just keeping me on track. Like I was obviously very, very focused on how it looked, and he was kind of like, Andy, we
mm,
got to get, we got to get this thing built. So, we built all our we did everything. We had a couple of trades on site to like when we did screw piles, we had a screw pile contractor. We had a couple of people come in to help with the bricks when we did brick because brickwork is one of those trades you got to be excellent at it. Dad being an electrical
true.
engineer, and he had Dad had his plumbing license. He's got his electrician's license. So we did all the electrics. We did all the plumbing. We did the subfloor, all the steel work, trusses, wall frames, plastering, you name it, we did it. Yeah.
Unbelievable. You guys must have saved so much money
Yeah, look, I
instead of
mean,
getting a builder involved.
I got the house quoted off my very elaborate design to start with, and it was around about the 700K mark to build.
Mm.
We built it for just under 300. So, you're
Wow.
talking about like phenomenal savings. But
Oh,
I'm just
unbelievable.
gonna put the disclaimer on that. Yes, it's amazing savings, but I spent every single night and every single weekend for 2 full years
Wow.
working on this. So I was working full time in Melbourne at the time. I was going through my architectural registration with Tim. I was
And you're building a house.
planning a wedding. So halfway through the build, we
God.
paused for a month. I got married. I went on my honeymoon. I came back.
Mm.
So my day was get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I was on the 5:30 train from Lara, start work at about that 7 o'clock mark, leave work at 4:30, get back on the train, off the train at about 5:30 from Lara, get to the site in Highton by 6, work till about 10, 11 o'clock until my neighbors started yelling at me, go home from there, sit down, do some budgets, do some planning for the next day. And that was just day in, day out, day in,
So
day
you
out.
didn't get much sleep.
Oh, shit, no. And then Saturday, Sunday
Jeez.
was 7 till 7. And Saturday and Sunday, they were our big days. That was like, if we were standing frames or we were
Mm.
hanging up steel. And I'm talking rain, hail, or shine. I've got a photo on site almost every single day. There was one day
Mm.
we were welding one of these PFCs in our ceiling, and it was hailing,
Mm.
and
Oh,
we're sitting there
Jesus.
welding this steel together. But it was just that's just what we did. We worked Christmas Day, we worked New Year's Day, we went crazy. And then you know what, Rose? To make
Right.
matters even worse, we ended up doing it 2 years later after I finished my build to do my brother's house as well.
So you helped him a lot as well.
Yeah, well, I helped him do the plans and stuff, and then I was there. I wasn't at his house as much as him and Dad were, because that it was their job. But I was there when we had to do heavy lifts, and I was there when we had to do things, and helped him
Was he
out
own a
with.
builder as well?
Yeah, yeah,
Was he
we've
the
helped.
engineer brother?
Yeah, he's a mech eng, so he actually works next to Shell at a place called Terminals, or now they're called oh God, I can't remember the name of what they're called now, but yeah, they're a chemical storage facility next to Shell.
So all his design, I imagine it's all commercial work.
All of it's commercial. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because I've never come across a resi job where a mechanical engineer was involved.
Nah, nah, God, no, 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 no.
Fun,
I
funny
did all the
enough,
I
I
did
have
all
come
the planning.
across, yeah, funny enough, I have come across a job where it was a residential job, brand new house, boutique house, and the client paid for an electrical engineer to get involved. They didn't need to. The architect could have just, done the electrical design for the dwelling. But anyway, this client did it. I think he's well off, had heaps of money,
I
yeah.
can't say
So
I can't say I've had an electrical engineer on a domestic project before, unless it's like
I've seen it once.
unless it's a massive domestic project, maybe. But even then, maybe not.
Mm, yeah. So Andy, you got any questions for me, mate? Do you have anything lined up you want me to answer or anything?
Oh, look, I guess you're a new father as well, mate.
I am.
Like I haven't seen you since you've had your kid, and I guess
Mm.
my question, I've actually got multiple questions for you,
Yeah, all
right?
right, go
Because
for it,
I haven't
mate.
seen you in years, pal.
I
But
know.
when I was bumming around with Tim when we were at uni and stuff, you were on a very very different career path, very very different career path. You were DJing, or you were trying to get into
I was
DJing, and
making beats. I was
yeah,
making beats.
you were
Yeah.
making beats, and then all of a sudden you go into the dark art of bloody building surveying, and
Mm.
I'm just interested to hear about how that's all gone. Obviously, me and Tim have gone down a different path because we're on the other side of the desk, and you've gone building survey. And what's your experience with the industry? How have you found it?
Yeah, well, I'll just tell you how it all came about. So, I was aged in my mid-20s, doing civil construction, and my parents sat me down. It's like, do you want to work your way up in civil construction? Because if you don't, we strongly recommend that you go to uni. Because I was a chippy as well, from the
Mm,
age of 19 to 23 did an apprenticeship as a carpenter.
Mm.
We just did frames. That was it. We didn't do the lockup and fix, just did frames. And then I stopped. You know, when you're a carpenter, if you're not interested in paying like 20K for a trailer with tools, and you don't see yourself being a carpenter long term, don't do it. You know,
Yeah.
do the 4 years, get the qualification, and then you can work for a company, or you just do something else. So I tried to do something else, and making the beach is a hobby. But yeah, I was doing civil construction for a number of years, and I chose not to go down the path of being a foreman. A few reasons was one, they got to get up early as fuck. Like they got to be at
Oh
the
yeah.
job. They got to get up. They got to be there like before 6 a.m. They've got to let all the people in that excavate because it takes them a while. They've got to all up their machines, and then they've got to track them out. And it's a long day when you're a foreman on the job site. And a lot of foremen actually don't get paid well enough for the hours they put
Mm.
in. And I
Mm.
was like, Dad told me about building surveying, so I thought it was interesting. It's a job where you can be in and out of the office, get the opportunity to do inspections, and they can do footings, frames, final inspections, and they're in the office as well. So
Mm.
I found it interesting, and yeah, it is an interesting job. You have your days when you're just dealing with shitty clients that they provide you all this stuff. They want the permit like a day or two after. It's like, mate, there's no way you're getting the permit a day or two after. There's so much stuff I've got to review.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
yeah, dealing with the clients can be tough. Building in general is tough because you got project managers. They just want to hurry up and get permits,
Yep.
and they want to build, make money, and just hurry up and finish jobs. And then you got building surveyors trying to do their jobs. Making sure everything provided to them is co-compliant before they issue the permit, before they can start building. And then
Mm.
architects get hammered because the building surveyors have assessed their plans and they've given them a list of stuff to fix, and the
Yep.
builders or the project managers having the architect to hurry up and get it fixed so I can get my
Mm.
permit. And look, it is a tough industry, especially like type A construction. And are you involved with much type A complex commercial work?
Heaps, mate. Heaps.
It's tough. Like I won't mention the company I work for, but they do with fire engineering reports, they do really, really um like they use Bluebeam, a program called Bluebeam, and they mark up the hell out of it.
Mm.
They question a lot of the fire engineering reports, and there's a lot of back and forth between the company I work for and the fire engineering gauge. And
Yep.
yes, they can
Yep.
slow down complex jobs, but you got to make sure it's all done properly because the builder is going to arrange subbies, and they've got to refer to the fire engineering reports to do everything properly. So
Yeah, 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 yeah.
look,
It's been my experience as well.
and
I
then
wouldn't want
mate,
to be a fire engineer.
I wouldn't want to be a project manager because I won't mention a job, but I know that there's a situation where there's an organisation that's agreed to a builder, and the job's going slower than expected.
Mm.
And if it doesn't, if the job doesn't finish at a certain time frame, then the builder's going to hit the client hard for liquidation costs. So the
Yeah.
clients, kicking up a fuss all the time. They don't understand properly the process, and it's going slower than they think. And they've agreed to the
Mm.
builder and sign off on it. It's just, look, the building industry is tough.
It's
I don't know
tough when
about
it's
yourself, Andy, but there's
it's tough when it's mismanaged.
Andy. I've had times when, look, with the company I work for, on a Wednesday I work from home, and there's times when I'll work from 9 a.m. till 7. I'll have a
Mm.
break for a few hours that involves eating, helping to bath my son. I might go for a 15-minute jog as well and eat
Mm.
dinner. And then I'll back on my computer at 9 till 11, 11:30.
Mm. Mm.
There's
Mm.
even
Mm.
times when I've really had to get a permit out, and I've had to just come home on a Thursday, log onto my computer and work till 11. So
Mm.
to meet deadlines, or else if you don't, you're dealing with these clients that are just going to potentially illegally build.
Mm.
And yeah, look, it is a tough industry.
I mean, it's
Look,
an
I do
interesting.
work
That's
oh,
it's an interesting
yeah,
statement you make about clients illegally building, right?
yeah,
Like, it's
potentially, mate.
the best saying that I ever got told, because we experience this as architects constantly. Deadlines, right? Clients saying, "Where are our drawings?" Building surveyors saying, "Fix your
Mm,
drawings," And the best phrase I ever heard
mm,
was, "Someone else's mismanagement is not your emergency." right? If you get something late, you shouldn't be expected to stay work until 11 p.m. at night like that. If that's precious time with your family, that's time with your son, that's
Mm,
time with your wife, and the problems are still going to be there tomorrow. If they choose to
mm,
build illegally, surely that's on them. You're not
mm,
responsible for them
mm,
building without the permit. But
mm,
I understand the pressure that you feel.
mm.
I go through the same thing.
Like, I'll just let you know, I work at the Melbourne Airport, but Melbourne Airport also, they issue permits for Essendon Fields Airport and Moorabbin.
Yeah.
And for an example, a lot of people don't know, but these airports with their lands, um, even during the construction process, they're still getting charged. The owner of that build, they're getting charged like 50K a month
Yeah.
to use that land, and they're not even operating. And this is where
Yeah.
the pressure happens. And then they don't understand, and they're just being asked as the project manager, look, I won't mention the job and I won't mention where it happened, but there has been a warehouse where more than half of it was built illegally without a permit.
Shit.
The client was just an arsehole to the project manager. They didn't handle the client properly.
Mm.
They needed a permit for the frame and all this other stuff, and they just started building, and it's sad. And look, I,
Yeah,
I
but
won't I
the
won't
thing is,
explain
look,
much after
look,
that.
I get it, mate. Like I've been in the industry now for just over 15 years,
Mm,
and even in the time that I've been in it, I think the biggest change that I've noticed is the sheer time pressure that people seem to be under. Like once upon a time, once upon a time. I sound like an old man, but when I first started, there seemed to be a lot less pressure to just go, 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 and there was more of an emphasis on let's do it thorough and let's do it right, and then let's
mm,
start. Now, because of the cost of everything, and because of leasing costs, and because of liquidated damages, and because of the tight time pressures and profit
mm.
margins that everyone's under, builders want to get onto a site and get off it and get onto the next one because that's how they make their
Yeah.
profits. No different for consultants. Consultants just want to go get on, deliver their packages, get off because that's how we get turnover. And
Mm,
it's a really interesting phenomenon because yes, you move off this job and you move on to the next one, but that pressure, that constant pressure in the industry to just go, 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 it's relentless. And then you end up with people working till 11 o'clock at night, and you end up with illegal works being built, and you end up
mm,
with mistakes and people getting hurt and all this type of stuff.
mm,
It's a disappointing part for me when I experience the exact same thing. You talk about it and I start to, we in Italian we say vomiga, it means like, it makes me sick, because you hear it and you go, I deal
mm.
with that on the daily.
Yeah, mate. So yeah, the building industry, I do people listen to this pod, it is actually a good industry to be in.
Yeah, sorry, it is
There's a
good.
lot of money to
It
be
is good.
made,
It is good.
and you're guaranteed to pretty much get a job, whether it's building surveying. Would you still say that in architecture there's still a demand for them, Andy?
Oh God, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, there is. So
absolutely.
you pretty much, if you once you get a degree in architecture and you try hard enough, you should get a job somewhere. Project management, trades. There's so much work,
Look, my
Victoria
my
and Australia.
my take on it is that I interview a lot of people coming out of university,
Mm,
mainly because the company that I'm working for, we've got a number of projects and we've got a lot of work, you know, currently upcoming, which is kind of rare for architects at the moment. Like the kind of general feel across the industry commercially is that work's a bit tough to get at the
mm,
moment for architects. There are a shit ton of clients building, and the industry is still very affluent. There's still a lot of stuff happening, but it's kind of with a select number of architects. So depending on the type of work that you want to get into, if it is domestic, it's quite a challenging market for architects. Commercially, there is work galore. But my experience with people coming into the industry is when I first started, I spent a year just doing a door schedule. Now, granted, it was on a 90-story skyscraper. We had like 15,000 doors, so
yeah,
it wasn't a small task.
yeah.
But I was happy to do that because that's how I was raised. When you come into a company, you're not designing the skyscraper on your first day.
No.
You're earning your strides to get to that position. You earn the respect and you earn the experience. Whereas my experience has been that people are coming into the industry maybe misinformed from university. I'm not sure if it's misinformed from university. Maybe that's not the right way to put it. But the experience at university is, my experience at university was that they don't, you're not worried about budget. You're not worried about a client necessarily. You're not worried about time. It's, go wild. I think I'll never forget in my master's year, I had one guy turn around and say, I'm going to design a hotel on the moon. And I always had trouble with this at university because for me, it had to be a realistic project. Now, maybe I'm a pessimist, right? A hotel on the moon would be great. But in the reality that we live in, I'm not sure whether that's setting people up with the right expectation of what they're actually going into in the industry. Once you get into the industry, as you would know from building surveying, mate, it's not always a sexy job. You just it's a lot of time just looking over stuff, making sure stuff's coordinated, making sure compliance is met. That's a
Mm,
huge part of it, and that's not really. I don't think that's really clearly explained to people. They hit an architecture firm, they hit a building surveyor firm, and they go, I want to be on site every day and I want to be doing this. And it's like, guys, this is not necessarily 100% of what we do. I didn't
mm,
get to start designing stuff until like 10 years in. Sure, I got little pieces of design as I went through, but
mm,
yeah, it's that my advice to people starting out is be hungry to learn. It sounds really cliched,
mm,
but be hungry to come into an office and yes, I will help you with that, or yes, I'll take that on. Absorb as much as you can, and by the virtue of just being there, you end up getting more and more responsibility. You get more and more experience. You get involved in more and more parts of what we do as architects, what we do as building surveyors, what we do as builders. It's really general advice for anyone coming into the industry is that you become valuable once you have the knowledge, and you don't get the knowledge until you come into the
true.
industry. You can read,
Mm,
people have said to me, how do I learn the building codes? My simple advice is to them, look at your own house, pick up the building codes, go around your own house and find things that are non-compliant. I go through my family home back at home. I've said to my father many times that ramp out the back, that's not compliant. These
mm,
stairs, those handrails aren't compliant. Heaps of stuff like that. So knowledge is power in our industry. And if you have it and you have the experience, you have the knowledge, you go really far. So that's been my experience. I got one more question for you if we've got time, Rhodes.
yeah, yeah, mate, let's go.
One thing I've always found interesting with building surveyors in part of the industry, we've often had this argument at home, is conflict of interest, right? Once upon a time, building surveyors, and look, I think you still can approach the council building surveyors if you want to for projects, but I've always found it an interesting phenomenon that sometimes as architects, we will engage a building surveyor to certify our drawings, or to review our drawings and give us our building permits. We are not necessarily the only consultant that's listed on the permit. The builders and stuff are also listed on the permits as well.
Engineers and stuff. Yeah.
Engineers, anyone that was involved in preparing the documentation.
Hmm.
But I find it an interesting phenomenon that, we engage a building surveyor and we are the ones paying them, right? So
Hmm.
I as the architect am engaging you to to review my package to the best of your knowledge and do your due diligence, but ultimately I'm paying you. So if you don't sign off my drawings and you don't give me my permit, I'm probably not going to come back to you next time. Now,
True.
I'm not saying that's my take on it. I'm just saying it's a very interesting part of the industry when you think about it, is that someone who you're expecting them, you're being the architect or the client or whoever it is that's engaging
Mm,
you, we're expecting you to work unbiased, because it's not that I'm going to give you your permit because I'm going to get paid. You have a responsibility and you have a duty of care to go, no, this is not compliant. That you have to do your job. But it's an
mm.
interesting relationship, because ultimately your pay is coming, the paying of your invoices is coming from the person who you're potentially going to say, no, I'm not giving you your permit. It puts you guys in a really awkward position. I just wonder whether you've had any experience with that and your feelings on that, I guess.
Yeah, look, I work for a company that's very thorough with commercial. We just do commercial. I won't mention the company, but I work for one of the bigger companies that do commercial work, not only Victoria but Australia. And look, we do find ourselves telling, the designer to amend something that other building surveyors wouldn't tell them to do.
Yeah.
and we get told this, and then we're like, mate, it's in the Australian standard, the BCA. We reference it, and and also I said to you before, fire engineering reports. I work for a company that they're very thorough with evaluating them, and they do tend to do a lot of markups, asking
Mm.
questions, getting things to get fixed. And we have actually had feedbacks from fire engineers saying that we tell them to do things that other building surveyors aren't doing. So that kind of sounds scary.
That doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing the wrong thing, though.
Oh
It might
no,
mean
it's
that other
just
building surveyors aren't
they
as
don't have the
thorough.
knowledge. They're not as thorough, and they're not looking into things as much as the company I work for. Um,
But
you
it's
know,
interesting, isn't it? Because if you guys are known as being a very tough building surveyor, then why would people come to you?
well, if you look, people
Because you
need
want
to
because you want
realize.
it's because you want a good job. That's where I'm leading with this. You want a
Mm,
building surveyor that picks up all these things so you don't have compliance issues in the future.
mm,
But it's
mm,
an interesting knife's edge, I reckon
yeah.
that one.
The things are, Andy, even though something you got a building permit and something has been built and then something happened and someone's getting sued, even though the building surveyor has given the permit and they've approved something when they shouldn't have, it's not just the building surveyor is going to get trouble. It's not just them; it's also the designer and also the builder as well. So
It's what they
it's
call distributed liability, right?
yeah. So that's
Everyone
why
is at fault.
if you're dealing with a building surveyor, they're not thorough enough and they're not doing their job properly, it just opens the opportunity of potentially getting sued for these other companies. So it is wiser to go to a good company that provides good service and have a good reputation.
Yeah.
Because if you go to a company, a building surveying company, they just don't, they don't have the experience even though they think they do. Especially,
Yeah.
it's mainly complex commercial jobs.
Yeah. Look,
It's not
we
just the
work
building surveyors.
we work with pretty good building surveyors. Like I should put the
Mm,
disclaimer in that I quite value their input because they're ultimately they're protecting us when there's something that's non-compliant
true.
that we've missed. So we work with quite
Mm,
good because of the scale of the projects that we're working on. Again, it's similar to you. It's it's town centers, it's neighborhood
mm,
activity centers, it's massive developments. You don't want a building surveyor that just goes, yeah, no worries, here,
mm,
sign. So my experience with them has been pretty good. I just always thought that relationship is quite interesting. I think, talking to older people in the industry, once upon a time, building surveying was public. So, you'd go through council to get
mm.
a building permit, and
It was too
you're
slow. Council was too slow, man. And
much
then
too
it went
slow. Like
private.
the system was antiquated, it didn't work, but
Mm,
it was more, I guess, they're paid by council, they're paid by government, so they don't have there's no other competing factor for them whether they give you a permit or not. It's just their own professional responsibility. But for you guys who are getting paid by the people that you're giving the permit to, it's just an interesting relationship, I think.
mm. Yeah, look, most clients, you answer the phone when they call you and you talk to them properly, they can be all right most of the time.
Yeah, yeah.
It is important to give a service. If you're not answering the phone, you're not returning emails, then you can really open yourself to get in trouble. I work
Mm,
at the airport, and then, if things don't go a certain way, then they'll try and complain higher than the airport
yeah,
because the department, which is the federal government, actually have given the company I work for the contract to do the airport works, and it just gets if you don't reply, some of these people, if you don't reply to an email in 24 hours, they'll go higher than the airport, and it just gets silly. But as I
yeah,
said
yeah,
before, it
yeah,
is tough. But most of the time, you provide a good service, answer the phone when they call you, return to an email within 24 hours.
yeah.
Most clients are, they calm down and they're appreciative of it.
Oh well, look, the thing is, our industry is all about network. It's all about your relationships with people. You can be listed as the best architect in the world, but if you're a shit people person and you're not picking up phone calls and you're not willing to be collaborative, forget it.
Yeah, they will go somewhere else.
My experience in the industry is we might not be the cheapest, but we might be the most collaborative to work with. We might be the most open and honest to work with, and that and that
Mm,
that that that
That's going to help you get clients
Well,
back.
that notoriety precedes yourself, because
Mm.
then you hear from other clients, oh yeah, you guys were really good to work with. We heard that you were collaborative, and we heard that you were open to hearing criticism. Because us architects, we're notoriously quite precious about our designs. So when a building surveyor rips it apart, it's hard for us to hear, but sometimes we need to.
Yeah, look, there's so much, man. There's so many Australian standards, and the BCA is a pretty big document as well, but it doesn't have everything. You need to refer to the BCA at times. But anyway, Andy, you got anything else, mate?
No. Look, I mean, good chat, Rones. Like
This
I
has
said,
been a good pod.
it's
It's
been a
been a good
very
first pod,
it's
and
it's
you've been a
been good.
fantastic first guest.
Oh, thanks, mate. Thanks.
No
Great. Well,
worries, mate.
hopefully I get to come back for the 10-year reunion, mate, when you've had on your 1000th pod, I can come back as the first again.
Well, mate, I hope to get you back a bit earlier than that. I've been talking to a few other people to get them on, but look, Andy, if I can get you back in a few months, and we form a bit of a strategy what we're going to talk about, I'd love to get you back, mate, because you've been a really good podder, been a fantastic guest, and it has been a great episode with you. So,
Thanks,
guys,
mate.
this is the first episode of the Keats Pod, and I'll try get it out during the week. And thank you guys for listening. And hopefully I'll get the second episode out pretty soon. All right. Cheers.